Namaste, Sat Sri Akal, Paji. Welcome to Law Unplugged. This is very grateful to have you on the show. You are like there are very lot of things to to attribute to your name, and we will do that in as the show goes on. But first of all, before jumping into the conversation, tell us कैसे हो पाजी सब संगा सी.
Sab changa, sab vadhiya, sat sri akal, and of course, a very, very happy Independence Day to everybody who's on the panel and to everybody who loves watching and tuning into Law Unplugged like me. And thank you so much for inviting me over here.
Yeah. It's our pleasure. Yaar. I mean, you have so much to your name, and we are just we are busy inviting people like you. So we have a lot to cover up. But anyway, so moving ahead, the first question to you is tell us, take us through your journey of Ragnul. How has it been there? 3 years deep into Ragnul now, deep into studying, presenting papers at conferences, and your flair for ADRs, MUNs, and being a chair at the Harvard MUN. So tell us everything. How has the journey been?
So, firstly, on to your first question. My journey at RGNUL was, something which I was very passionate about. I always wanted to, somehow end up very close to my home state, because sometimes people say that you be dependent or you be independent, right? Both of them are good options, but I chose semi-independence. Semi-independence is basically like 5 days at the hostel and Saturday, Sunday, of course, you just get to drive down to Chandigarh, and it's a great feeling. Coming to the institution, infrastructure-wise, I don't think anything beats RG annual, right? Like the internet connectivity, the amount of opportunities which you have in terms of reading, in terms of research, the library, the faculty is absolutely amazing, right? In terms of placement opportunities, it's gradually growing, right? Because of course, it does have that slight locational disadvantage of the fact that, it's not Delhi, it's not Bombay. But on the other hand, it is very close to Delhi, it is still very close to Chandigarh. And it does have that benefit. Apart from that, there are so many good juniors, so many good seniors that come in. I guess the most important thing about any national law university are the students, and I guess the students are truly the vibe of RGNUL, right? The students make RGNUL what it is, and all in all, I guess I wouldn't trade my experience at RGNUL for anything else.
And also tell us about your love for debating and money. So how did it all start, and how did you make up to Harvard?
Of course. So, long story short, right? When I was 14 years old, it actually has a very serious connotation. It began on a very serious note, right? I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 13. Right, I used to be a complete introvert. I did not speak much. However, my school counselors and therapists, everybody said that try talk therapy, try speech therapy, get this boy to speak because he has good thoughts and he can possibly express himself on stage. So when I was 13, we had something called the St. John's, that was my school Old Boys Association debate, and it has been taking place for almost 60 years now, and it has seen participation by different renowned people of my school, such as Ayushman Khurana, Manish Tiwari ji, Kapil Sibal ji. So of course I participated in that, and my teacher helped me, and I came out as a winner, and I was one of the highest ranked people across the 60-year history of the competition. From there, of course, I got immediate entry into the Model United Nations Club. I started, of course, like anybody else would, as a delegate. Gradually started, getting one or two breaks, and then I met one very close mentor of mine. I really hope she watches this video. Her name is Radhika Rishi. Right. So she was an ex assistant director at Harvard Model United Nations. And she was like that, dude, you have some potential. Why don't you apply? And along with her was Sahil Kakadia, who was, of course, from my school. So both of them guided me through the entire process. And I still remember I was on vacation in, Canada with my family. And the person who was interviewing me was in Japan. So I gave my interview almost like in the dead of the night, and I still somewhat made it to Hyderabad, and it was a beautiful, beautiful experience being amongst approximately over 10,000 people, and you've got so many good speakers. One very, very good memory, or my favorite memory of Harvard, would be meeting so many good people, particularly IS officers, and meeting politicians and diplomats. Mr. Vikas Swaroop, of course, that's one name I can never forget. So that's my experience.
Also, just to add on to that, I don't know if you remember, but I was a delegate at Nagpur International MUN, in which you, I guess, you had bagged some best delegate, if I'm not wrong, and it was very intimidating, man. I mean, I thought you are such a, you are a giant, and I had no experience whatsoever. So I mean, so the journey has been great. I mean, I'm to some part I am a witness of it, but that's great. I mean, ending up at Harvard, great.
Thank you so much, Rajas. I've honestly enjoyed debating with people in Nagpur. I've been there twice. I've been for the IM. I've been there for the IMT MUN as well. And of course, when I was there in the Nagpur committee, it was based on the Crimean crisis. That was really, a very, very hot topic way back in 2015. I was only 15 years old then. But whenever I'm debating, I'm a very, very different person. I just like to get to the point. I like to, of course, when you're talking about diplomacy is of course about leadership. It's also a little bit about intimidation, especially when you're the, Russian Federation. You're representing the Russian Federation on a topic like that. So I apologize for coming across as intimidating. I hope you find me a little bit different now.
Yeah, I mean, actually, the point was that so a friend of mine, Naitik Mule, I think he was in your committee. I'm not able to recall right now, but he told me some tips and tricks which the best delegate did, that is you did. I adopted them. The next MU and I get the honorable mention, and I said, "Arey, bhai, ye to Mr. Naman Anand, you are the reason why I won my first honorable mention."
I am very, very humbled to hear that, Rajas. Congratulations on that, and I hope, and I've clearly seen that you've grown so much more from that. MUNs, I just realized, I thought that MUNs will be a different journey, it will be a different chapter. But from MUNs, I got into law school, I got into international law, and it opened up quite a few avenues for me. And I really hope that it does the same for you as well.
Great, Naman. Yeah. So yeah, talking about international law. While I was surfing through your LinkedIn profile, I got to know you in your first year. Probably the first year student who got to intern in a US law firm called Beard and Company. That too in international arbitration. And now even you're interning with a law firm in Nairobi in Kenya. So how did you internationalize your career? So what do you think? What is the importance of traveling and getting that exposure from the international point of view?
So see, I believe that it's very, very important. Even if you have to end up, litigating in India or being a part of an Indian law firm, you can't avoid thinking of the fact that law is something that hasn't been globalized in India, but it is going to be globalized very, very soon, right? Everything, right? Whether you talk about cars, you talk about restaurants, or any other commodity or a service, it is of course in globalized nature, and you really, really need to focus on that skill. Now, coming to the first part, that is Billiot and Co. Right? Billiot and Co. I initially knew somebody who was a batchmate of Mr. Billiot, right? Who is also a senior associate at a leading Indian law firm, whom I happened to meet at a conference. So essentially, through him, I got the Billiot and Co. connection. I got to know about this law firm in Belgium, right? And I had been rejected from approximately 40-45 law firms earlier, right? But that there was always something inside me that no, I have to end up over there somehow or the other. I have to go to the EU. I need to understand more about arbitration. So I applied and somehow I got through. And the best part about Billiot and Co was that Billiot and Co is the main sponsor firm for the Association of International Arbitration, and it's basically a very dynamic association which works very closely with the EU as a think tank. So the one very interesting thing I had worked on was with the European Commission to establish a Brexit tribunal, right, for all specific disputes that arise out of Brexit. And I'm very, very happy to state that, it's been working. People have been getting results. So the possibly the best thing about an internship is to see, it to see it mature into something that the common public has benefited out of. The second example which I would give from that internship was my experience, filing claims against a very leading European airline for antitrust and competition. So that's the one particular competition law matter I also did. And secondly, of course, the Association of International Arbitration, so many mediation arbitration workshops and seminars. So that was a beautiful experience. Now coming to Mutune Kinua and Company, it is one of the very few women-owned and operated law firms in Kenya. I was very, very motivated to apply, and of course, I mentioned that reason, and I guess that is why Miss Faith Mutune, who's their managing partner, she selected me, and I went through the entire Kenyan legal market. Why did the Kenyan legal market particularly fascinate me? Because once again, it's a Commonwealth jurisdiction. It's one of the fastest developing economies in Africa, right? And along with that, it is indeed a coastal economy, but it is still very, very contingent on tourism, on cultural products, but it still has that very nice shipping and maritime tinge to it. Along with that, Mutune Kinua and Co. is very, very close to the Nairobi International Arbitration Center. And since and see, it's such a small world, right? Mr. Billiot is an empaneled arbitrator at the Nairobi International Arbitration Center. So while going through his profile, I went through the entire arbitration centers he's there at. The first thing I did was I need to know all of the law firms and all of the other lawyers who were empaneled to argue cases over there. Out of that, I applied to almost all law firms, got rejected. This was the one law firm which accepted me. And over there, the kind of work which I got was about IP and its interrelationship with dispute resolution. Along with that, I also worked on 223 telecommunications and media technologies licenses. So that was a very, very interesting thing which I did. So that's all about my two internships. Just to add, right, towards the end, my internship, of course, it's at the very, very end at Mutune Kinua and Associates, and I would definitely recommend other people to try out other jurisdictions, because understand that all of us are not just Indian lawyers, right? We are part of a larger organization called the Commonwealth of States, and there is a reason why you study comparative common law, right? It is because of this particular reason.
Yeah, wow, wonderful. I mean, yeah, I mean, the one key thing, the world is such a small place. I mean, many people actually think that, okay, it is actually impossible for me to try out a foreign uh, legal system. But yeah, as you said, if you can do it, you leave a huge inspiration to others as well, especially your juniors like us. So,
Yeah, wonderful. Really, really. In this interconnected world, it's important, I think. Moving on, Naman, as you've been, apart from doing a lot of debating and MUNs, if even actively writing research articles and been publishing them, you have like published journals in very reputed journals like ILSA, and now you've even started your own journal, that's International Journal for Project International and Energy Laws. So, like, what's up the model with it, and what do you think about the marketing and the way forward? How do you take this journal? Just
Of
explain
course.
that.
So Hemant, I'll thank you for your question. I'll just answer the first part of your question. Right. So of course, that's the International Law Students Journal of International and Comparative Law. It's basically the journal of the Nova Southeastern University, which is best known as the host of the Jessup Moot. So in the first edition, right? Sorry, the first issue of the 27th volume, which is about to be released towards January 2021, that will feature an article by me, and that has been co-authored by my junior Dikshi Arora. I worked with her on this article, and the name of the article was basically "Where there is a will, there is no way." E-wills and a case for legalizing them in common law jurisdictions. So basically, it was a very, very small idea as to how, despite COVID, despite so many different things in numerous jurisdictions, signing and recording of wills online is not something that is recognized by law, right? So my entire research was based on that, and I'm very, very happy to publish it at Nova Southeastern University. People say that, you just send it to one journal, two journals, have some exclusive submissions, but no, I am not somebody who believes in exclusive submissions. I believe that, see, it is your intellectual property. You have to pitch it across people, right? Like a commodity. So always try to opt for journals which allow you to simultaneously submit to other journals. At one point in time, I had simultaneously submitted it to over 30 publishers, right? This specific article has been, rejected by 92 people, right? By 92 people, I mean 92 different journals. It was accepted by 4, and I chose this one. So it's never ever easy, but you got to keep hustling. Right now, coming to my journal, the name of my journal, of course, it's a little bit long, but it's called the Indian Journal of Projects, Infrastructure, and Energy Law. Right. And now, why did I focus on something like this? It's because it's a very, very, you know, interesting area of law. Not many people have focused on it, but at the end of it, everything, if you look at any development or any growth in a nation's future, right, it is always through infrastructure and through sustainable infrastructure. Right, everybody talks about Scandinavia and ethanol. People talk about Saudi Arabia, they talk about oil. Right, I want people to talk about India and to talk about something, that specifically relates to its infrastructure. And that's why, I had some savings, right, which I of course got from trading in stocks. That's something which I do as a hobby. Right, from that I of course got a website and everything. I created a very, very small team of 4 people, and now of course we are recruiting more people for our journal, and we've got so much of love. We've got quite a few people, from leading law firms. Right, we've got people from legacy law offices. We've got people from Fox Mandal. We've even got somebody from Dheer and Dheer. Very, very shortly, I'm going to announce somebody from one of the big 4 consultancy firms. We already have one of the big 8 consultancy, engineering consultancy firms on the panel, that is Intercontinental Consultants and Technocrats. And the journal is not just a journal. Of course, there's going to be a blog. The journal is going to run purely online on a quarterly basis. Why did I choose an online journal? Of course, because I wish to promote sustainable development. Right? When you have the online mediums, right, you can cut down on your publication costs, and of course, you can save the environment. And the third thing, which is of course inspired by Law Unplugged, I want to have a podcast, but that podcast, unlike Law Unplugged, which focuses on general student topics, will focus only on professionals in this particular sector or arc of law. That's all.
Definitely wonderful. I've seen what I found out is you try and like exploring things.
Yeah, just to add on that, I mean, 92, 92, that is just out of anyone's league. I mean, if I start searching journals, I won't even get 92 different journals. You submitted to 92 different journals. I mean, they got rejected by 92 and accepted by 4. So, I mean, that is just, way above me.
Of course, I mean, sometimes, you just got to keep finding. And I guess the best way to find is to look at international publishers and the list of the journals that come under that publication. Now, for everybody, I'll just give them some information. You always look at the law journals list on Expresso and on Scholastica. Along with that, you look at Springer Law Journals if you are planning to publish internationally. So it contains a list of over 180 different law journals, right, out of which almost 120 to 30 will be accepting articles on a rolling basis, or their period of submissions will of course be open. Right, try to submit it everywhere, right, as much as possible. And of course, you do have other online legal portals, right, in India which do have that. And of course, the first thing you need to do is whenever you're a student, let's say at a national law university, whatever colleges, you just know their names, just type law review or law journal. Keep compiling a list. And it's very, very important to keep a Google document or an Excel sheet which has the deadlines for submission for each and every issue, right? Whatever is upcoming and where can you submit it? Because I've seen the one fundamental issue with law students while publishing is that they just keep writing their article, and they are so focused on the process that they don't care about the result. And of course, that's something very, very good, right? But when it comes to publication, it has to work in the opposite manner, right? You don't have to be focused on the process as much as you have to be, focused on the result. Why do I say so? Because you really need to target 4 or 5 journals and curate your content according to, their interests. I'll explain it in a nutshell, right? If I have to explain Ram Janmabhoomi, right, the entire decision, I can explain it in 1500 words. I can even explain it in 15,000 words. right? But the way I write it, with 15,000 words, I'll target a different, type of journal, and with 1,500 words, I might target a blog, or I might target a small submission as a part of a journal. So you need to be very, very focused as to what your end aim is. And I guess I was always clear with the same.
Yeah, I guess I mean just to add on that again, what people do is that they write random articles and they submit to random blogs. I mean, blogs who everybody hasn't heard of, just for the sake of getting that one name on that CV. So I mean, that is definitely not one should pursue. Like,
Yeah, I
See,
mean, yeah. Go ahead, go ahead.
sure. Rajas. I'm so sorry. So the one thing which I wanted to add on that was that, see, you have to think of academia as something which deserves respect, right? There is a reason why in Hinduism they say that, when you talk about academia, you talk about goddess Saraswati, or you think of literature as a type of a deity, right? So to say, the reason behind the same is that literature, language, right, and research, all three of them are very, very pure things. You don't have to get them on your CV just for the sake of it, right? You need to be genuinely interested in something, and trust me, if you are, right, the first thing you need to understand is that you work on your idea, you believe in your idea, right, and you will definitely find some kind of outlet or some kind of platform for it, right? Submitting to a random place will only result in frustration for you, right? And even if it gets accepted, you're basically selling out your intellectual property for nothing. Because of course this is a very, very serious issue that has gone along with law students in India, that they are just trying to post on random blogs. Now what happens is that these blogs just want content for their search engine optimization, right? And once they have the search engine optimization, they just want a little bit more of traffic on their website so that they can advertise and put money in their pockets, right? And that's not right. These people are not supporting academia, right? True academia, college journals, right? And it lies in student run journals which are not for profit, right? I would not like to toot my own horn over here, right? But the particular reason why I kept IJPIL not for profit and without any advertising is because I want to provide people an opportunity that if you have the merit, right, you can do whatever you want to.
Great. I guess that is more important. I mean, what is more important is quality over quantity, and a lot of students often tend to ignore it because it's a rat race. I mean, is what my analogy is, that in a rat race you just want that publication column in your LinkedIn to have some more than three or four digit of more than three or four. So I think somewhere in that process we all lose track a lot of times. But then it's fine. I mean, if someone watches this interview, they'll get to know.
I that's the reason why I feel that Law Unplugged is such a beautiful medium for people to know more about the law, know more about people's experiences. And coming to the rat race, Rajas, of course you're very, very right when you talk about it, right? Sometimes, and this characterizes all industries. You talk about engineering, you talk about medical, you talk about any industry, and now of course as law is coming up, more people are appearing for CLAT. This is going to turn into a rat race. But what is the one way to crack the rat race? Never ever think of it as a race with other people. Think about it as a quest, not even a race, as a quest to find your own self, to find what is good in you, what is good about you, and what is something that is unique, right? Something that will set you apart from the others and allow you to curate your own story, right? Now, of course, everybody knows what I'm talking about, right? So many people write virtual internship with XYZ on their CVs in LinkedIn, right? So many people want that internship at XYZ law firm, right? All right, fine. Let's say even if you get it, right? Why do you have to follow the herd, right? Go somewhere, explore something which other people haven't done, right? Create something, right? Because let's say there will be a recruiter, there are 50 CVs in front of him or her, right? They're stellar CVs. How do you get that junior associate job at that place which you always wanted? Point number one, it has to be that place which you were targeting, right? And point number two, right? If there are 49 CVs which have virtual intern at XYZ, you have to say, no, I was an intern at this organization. and I did something totally different, right? You have to show your soft skills about the fact that you are ready to work in any dynamic environment, and you possess the ability to be in places which are off the beaten track, and you can think of that beaten track, right? Because everybody in the industry is on that beaten track. The moment you go, on your own journey and you try to find yourself, you will find success. I know I was a little bit philosophical over there, but I really hope that this inspires anybody who's watching.
Completely. I mean, I completely acknowledge and endorse that philosophy, and the very intent that goes into saying that is because in the end also, if you, even if, say for example, someone gets 10 publications of, say, some random law ka topic, right? So, I mean, what will someone recruit him on? Like, you have written on some completely descriptive articles. There is no analysis. So, what's the use of it? I mean, so in the end, it's all about finding the nuances of law, and then working upon it and producing something novel and which obviously interests you. So, completely acknowledge.
Of
Now,
course, of course.
yeah,
So one last point which I would like to add to that, which I forgot to add, was that if you have to write good articles and you have to publish at good places, you have to be a very, very good reader. You have to be a very, very good listener, right? Of course, I am the person who's doing a lot of the speaking today, right? But I'm usually not somebody who is speaking a lot, right? I like to listen, I like to absorb, and I like to acknowledge, right? Those three things are very important. You find some ideas in society, whether it be a conference, workshop, seminar, right? One of my articles was initially based on a conversation which I had with my friends, right? So that was something which gave me an idea, and then you try to research on your own. You read articles whether something or the other, in this way or the other, has been a part of some journal, right? This topic has been explored or not. And if you can't find a topic, do something. You just open any random law journal, right? If you, let's say, have a national law review, right, or you have any international journal from a good reputed university, you open that, you look at the ideas, right? If you don't have an idea, or in your own, comment on somebody else's idea, right? Being a Punjabi person taught me to comment and analyze and judge people a lot, right? Because of course that's something people do in our culture, tu aida hai, tu aisa hai, right? Something like that, right? But when you look at it in a professional or an academic sense, right, you can critique another person's article. I didn't like reading this, or I beg to differ. Go ahead, differ, because that idea altogether is your new idea, and you can get inspired by something. It doesn't always have to be organic.
I don't know what to say on that. I mean, I didn't even think of that. An article can be written on, a call. I mean, I can't even imagine, but yeah, you did it. Yeah, so I mean, that calls for, what goes if you are a good listener, I guess. So, Rajesh, what do you?
yeah, just to, like, I mean, I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but like somewhere this entire startup was based on a phone call between me and Amay, and we were frustrated with being very idle in the lockdown phase. So we said that let's create something for ourselves, because we were not into studying. I mean it was a state of mind. So no offense to anyone, but I wasn't into a lot of publishing and researching. So I said, let's do something very off the track and something new. And also in the end, I mean it's to some extent fruitful, because we have met so many beautiful people, and the journey is continuing, of course. And now, so I mean, channelizing this whole into a question being to you that, see, we started this because we were very we were not very focused regarding academics. But you, on the other hand, you have while being good in academics, you have started your own journal, you are coming up with podcasts. So, and like what it all boils down to is time management. So what is your mantra to time management, and how do you wish others to adapt it and go ahead with it?
Of course. Thank you. Thank you so much for your question. See, time management is something that is, once again, very, very important, right? So when I talk about it, it's very, very important to have that sense of discipline. When are you waking up? When are you, you know, doing something, right? You need to structure time slots for everything. You need to create that priority list, right? Honestly, I know I'm advertising an app over here, but I would very openly name it. It's like a secret to my success, right? It's called any.do, any.do, right? That's the name of the app. I always keep my reminders and time checks on that app, and honestly, it has really helped me, you know, just structure something or the other. People might say that you have to pay 700 or 800 bucks in terms of a subscription for an app, but if you pay 700 or 800 bucks, what happens, right? You start using that app as a free app, right? Because, oh, I've invested 700 800 bucks in this, now I must try to get the best out of this app. When you try to get the best out of that app, what essentially happens, you start utilizing it, and when you utilize it, it fulfills its purpose. So that's essentially how I basically manage things, right? And I would just recommend to everybody, right, that if you are focused on something, do not try to pursue so many different things all together, right? Unless and until you feel you can. I've seen some people who are doing three internships, they are focusing on 3 or 4 articles. Then I asked one of my juniors, he's like, sir, I had to drop out of 2 of them. How many articles did you end up publishing? Sir, none of them. I could not finish any of those 4 ideas, right? It is very important to remain very focused on just one thing, right, and finish it, right? Because what happens, some people say, no, you need to multitask. I am not a multitasker, right? I always take one idea and I try to finish it as quickly as possible and then move on to the next task. Sometimes when you are picking up 4 to 5 tasks all together, right, especially in a hyper competitive environment as a law school, right, you tend to get daunted. Just break them down into smaller tasks. Sometimes even that one task is daunting, break it down into further steps. It's all about the psychology and all about the mindset with which you are approaching a task, right? And that's all from my side.
Nice, very good. I mean, exactly. I mean, what I faced is that, in my first semester, that is when, I got the opportunity to participate in a, intra moot court, or, intra client counseling, or, volunteering in some events, or, going this, going there. So, I was in a fantasy. So I signed up for every single thing. Okay, but what I actually ended up doing is that, oh shit, इतना है अभी किसमें क्या करूँ मैं? So as a result, rather than to doing all of the things heartlessly, do one thing with full force. So that is I exactly agree with you. Yeah, totally agree with you. Yeah. Okay, so yeah,
No, and,
this
and one more thing is that in this the process of doing a lot of things, we tend to sideline academics a lot of times. So I guess that is maintain that pointer above 8 is, I guess, very crucial in the growing competition.
wonderful. So this brings us to the next segment, which we call the on your fingertips round. So which is kind of similar to rapid fire round. So Naman, be as candid as you can. This is the fun part of the interview. So okay, so
Okay.
you have done courses or internships. By doing that, you have almost covered each and every law. Be it water law, arbitration, or air law, or competition law, or every law. So in law school, or what is which is the most boring law which you encountered in this process?
Well, the most boring law which I honestly encountered, in my opinion, as in like a subject, I would say it is legal research methodology, right? Because I was somebody who was already interested in editing, reading, writing, and citing in law school. So I basically just used to sit at the end of the class, and all of us, we used to count how many times has the professor quoted the word research. Right, so all of us, we just used to do that, play a little bit of Fortnite, PUBG, check Facebook. All of us have done that.
So I guess let's do a virtual hug. All four of us. I think all four of us can agree to that. See, Rajos, excitement coming out. Okay. So next, you have judged many MUNs. No, sorry, not judge, but being the chair of. So you have given a chance to chair more MUNs all around the world, and given a chance to do a vacation scheme in a magic circle law firm. So what would you choose?
I would honestly, be a fool if I don't choose the Magic Circle law firm, right? Because of course that is a different experience altogether. At a Magic Circle law firm, if you're in the international law team of a Magic Circle law firm, you might even get to work with, let's say an international law team which is handling issues at the ICJ or is working very closely in consonance with UN officials. However, when we are specifically talking about Magic Circle law firms, I would definitely like to mention the fact that it does not start and end at a Magic Circle law firm, right? Everybody thinks about that as a target, right? But there are now, for example, I interned at Billiot and Co. Billiot and Co is not a Magic Circle law firm, right? It only has, on an average 15 to 18 lawyers. You can even go to a super specialized boutique law firm, right, and still work with people who handled the UCAS arbitration case, right, which is by and far one of the world's largest arbitration cases in terms of the amount of claims that were involved in the same, right. So of course, Magic Circle is a different league altogether. But if you're targeting a law firm, always focus on your particular specialization, right? Never ever be ashamed to say that, for example, no, sir, I particularly work on public-private partnerships, or sir, I particularly work on, telecommunications and media technology, telecommunications, media and technology, right? And in that, I specifically work on telecommunications licenses. Is there any kind of work at your law firm? Always focus on that. So I guess my dream would not necessarily be a Magic Circle law firm. It would always be somewhere where I find my particular niche. Up to the next question, of course, Amya.
Yeah. So you're speaking of your goal and targets. So why don't you tell us three things which are in your bucket list?
All right. So three things which are in my bucket list are to firstly go to all the countries in the world. I am somebody who loves traveling. I've already traveled to well over 25 countries, but I still want to explore more. The second thing which I want to do, most importantly, is that, before I, let's say, graduate from law school, when I'm young, right, particularly, let's say, maximum by 26, 27, at least one time or two times, I want to go and play in Scotland, which is the home of golf, right? I love playing golf and I really just want to go and play on that golf course, right? Right on the left side, there's the sea, and you have all of those old styled golf courses, so I've always been interested in that. And the third thing which I would like to honestly do is that, of course, I'm working on IJPIEL right now, right? I would definitely want to make IJPIEL a platform which is recognized internationally, and I want to make it accessible to as many people as possible, right? Because let's be very honest, nobody wants to run a journal their entire lives, but they want to leave that legacy of that journal for an entire lifetime. So of course, I do promise over here on Law Unplugged, through Law Unplugged, that after 3 years, I will definitely exit the journal, right? And I will give it away to elected management. And I wanted to work effortlessly, possibly, 40 or 50 volumes or editions that definitely come through. It's just my dream, or just my small initiative of giving back to the law school community.
Right, wonderful. So we also hope the next time our juniors are doing a moot court competition, so when they log into SCC Online or Springer or Scholastica, so they find this IJPIEL. So Naman, please RGNUL in 3 words.
RGNUL in 3 words: dynamic, enthralling, and fun.
Fun. I guess so. That's it. So that was the last question. So I mean, I'm very glad we had this talk. We talked with everything. The law, writing papers, and taking your career international, treating with food. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess there's one more question. Name a silly law which would create. I mean, based on other people we've had. One of the people said we should have coffee mandatory on each floor. Then one person said that we should ban human stupidity, and that way. So what would you do?
Well, if I, get the chance to legislate a stupid law, I'm personally somebody who loves traveling, right? And if it weren't for COVID, I always love, trying out different airlines, going to different destinations. But the one thing I hate in a, plane, regardless of whatever class you're sitting in, right, is if there's a crying infant on the plane, right? So in a nutshell, right, nobody below the age of, let's say, 12 should be allowed to enter an aircraft. So that's my stupid law.
That is very bold. No one below 12. Though that law should also apply to movie theaters, if I'm not wrong. The movie is going on, then it totally ruins everything. So that is yet one more. When some more people come to our talk show, will genuinely refer that. Okay, this should also be done. Okay, so so again, this brings us to the end of the conversation.